Hi, everyone. I'm very honored to be here, and especially on stage with Burak again, because last time we were on stage together was October in Shanghai for similar kind of purpose, fostering innovation, looking for scientific solution for sustainability issue in the fashion industry. So today we are here and with another 3 pairs of amazing talents. And I think the theme is about the collaboration between science and design. And then we all know, like, sorry, I forgot to introduce myself. Too eager to jump into the discussions. So my name is Shaway. I'm the founder of YEHYEHYEH, which is a consultancy agency I started about 2 years ago, bringing sustainability, innovation, and creative together to instigate value-based changes with a strong focus in China. That's where I base. So many engaged companies, designers, and consumers there towards the sustainability practice. So here we are. So we all know, like, fashion industry is renowned for collaboration or crossover. So they have been collaborating with music industry a lot. They're collaborating with artists, and then collaborating with film industry. But I think we never really heard about their collaborating with scientific community until now. So I'm very curious, like, why do fashion designers really collaborate with designers? So I'm going to ask the 3 designers, starting with Phillip. And so what do you find, among Charlotte, you're pairing with Charlotte, right?
Yeah,
so,
Charlotte. Yeah.
So in Charlotte's work, what inspired you most to push you to do whatever, I don't know, the secret you two are cooking up?
Yeah, it's quite a fantastic secret, if I may say so myself. We can't reveal today, but why I'm so excited to work with Charlotte, because we have a very similar point of view. As a designer, I'm always inspired by nature. I look towards nature for inspiration. And now she shifted me into a space where maybe we look towards nature for a different type of answer, a more sustainable answer. And I believe that if we start right, if we start as natural as possible, we have less to correct, we have less to fix, we have less to clean up, and we have less to apologize for. So we own it, we own our actions. And Charlotte here, brilliantly, has come up with a product that's 100% algae plastic alternative. That's right, folks, not plastic, a plastic alternative made of algae. Something that exists in nature, something that sequesters carbon, basically. And together, through her incredible invention, I'm able to take this material to employ it into a beautiful product, a beautiful garment that will be carbon neutral, that will be less harmful, that will be regenerative, that will be desirable. You know, it just be normal, because I think that's the key. How do we make something spectacular normal? That way it just becomes like the air we breathe. And it is an example of how science and design can coalesce together to push forward into a more conscious, responsible luxury space. You can really enjoy what you wear and feel good about it too. And for me, for myself, the reason why this is such an incredible project too is it allows me to continue forward towards where I want to be, which is to find a sustainable balance.
Amazing.
Thank you.
So Phillip, we can't wait to see the final outcome at the end of this project.
It's going to be normal. It's going to be no big deal.
So I want to turn the question
it's kind of
back
major,
to Charlotte. Yeah. So let's hear from your partner as well, Charlotte. We know that you work always in the intersection of arts and science. And you have your studio right now in the new ink, which is the incubator of the new museum. So if anybody wants to come find you, they can find you there, I assume. But you're also an industrial designer as well as a researcher and really trying to bring science art together. So I'm curious, what is the one-by-one and your partnership with Phillip Lim going to bring to your existing innovations and future innovations?
So this might just turn into a love fest, which is a little bit, but it's really just spectacular to be able to collaborate with Phillip Lim. Being the opportunity to work with someone who has such deep insight and has a team with such deep insight into the fashion industry. I'm an outsider to fashion. That's a great gift. But even beyond that, someone who's been a leader and done the lonely thing of being out in front, thinking about materials, thinking about trying to get materials right from the outset, that is such a gift to be able to learn from and try to contribute my sort of carbon focus, my very nerdy carbon emphasis, contribute that to a strong tradition of leading on sustainability from thinking about materials first. But also the question, I think Phillip's already spoken to it, the question of my work can get a little bit conceptual and be trapped in the clouds a little bit, and the question of how do you bring it to the human, how do you make it moving and beautiful and real, that's a gift that I think I get from this collaboration, and it's still happening, it's brand new, but I'm looking forward to sort of growing in that way and learning through that collaboration. Yeah.
Yay.
Okay, so we hear the two sides of the first pairs, and then I think Charlotte mentioned about like, oh, this like a scientific collection. Actually, there's a very important component where designer come in, it's bring this kind of human-centered values. So I think this is a question for Mara. So you're being paired with to work with Custom Collaborative on the segment of a human-centered design. So can you tell us, so is this a scientific collaboration or is not? And what is a human-centered design? And through these collaborations, how does, just elaborate on this collaboration.
Yes. First, just a quick thank you for Swarovski and Study Hall and the UN Office of Partnership for putting this together. I think it's such a great initiative. And I'm so excited to be working with Ngozi and Custom Collaborative on this. And we are definitely coming at it from the human-centric place. When we brought our teams together to discuss what would this collaboration look like, we both mutually felt very strongly that it wasn't about creating another product or thinking of something else that we could make. We make enough things. But how do we take the work that Custom Collaborative has been doing and the work that we have been doing as a fashion company for 20 years now and scale that and strengthen that and make a model that really puts women's economic empowerment and advancement through developing a workforce out there and make that stick in the industry by creating a system where we can test that and build something together. I know that how important it is to put women forward right now, and I think we all feel that when we see what this planet needs as far as leadership goes. For me, it's very much connected to compassion and consciousness, and I feel that women are ultimately leaders in those space, and we need them leading in order to meet the technology that's there so that we can work on the solutions that are in desperate need right now. So a big goal is to create this working model and then hold the fashion industry also accountable for doing the same and for pushing these programs and bringing women in and creating skills and developing entrepreneurial skills so that we can grow from that space.
Thank you for that, Mara. And I guess this will be another very complimentary feedback, but I don't want to explain in detail what Custom Collaborative is. I'm going to leave it to Ngozi, but I would love to hear a bit about what is Custom Collaborative so our audience knows about it more, but also what does it really mean to be part of this one by one for you, and is it accelerating your existing initiative to take it forward through this partnership?
Absolutely, thank you. So thank you for having me here, for having Custom Collaborative here, for everybody listening and coming and being so interactive with us today. Custom Collaborative, so we're actually at Custom, C-O-L-A-B. Please follow us. Thank you. So we are a nonprofit social enterprise that supports women from low-income and immigrant communities develop careers and businesses in sustainable fashion. So I just want to stop there for a second because you're saying like, well, she doesn't sound like a scientist. I have a degree in political science, but that doesn't really count. But what's really going on is that the reason that people of color, that the reason that women are marginalized is because of a specific sets of social sciences, right? People don't live in neighborhoods that have bad schools or where highways run through them or where there's a lot of pollution for no reason. That was specifically engineered, and so what we're doing is figuring out how to give people the boost, the lift up, what they deserve as people to get the hell out of that. So I am actually really excited for this initiative. Mara has been working with Custom Collaborative for a while in various ways, and so this will really institutionalize what we're doing. This fellowship really provides funding for then 3 women who have come through our 14-week training institute to put their skills into practice, to learn more skills, and to bring everything that they have to offer to the industry that needs some innovation. We will also be able to have more qualitative and quantitative data because we know what works, but we've been working on a shoestring. And so now we can put out reports and we can refine what we're doing and improve ourselves internally, also the industry. I would also say that we'll be able to measure this. So storytelling, all the things that make people feel and understand what's going on. Finally, we will be able to have a case study. So other designers can look at Mara Hoffman and say like, oh, so we thought that we were short of seamstresses and technical designers and pattern makers in the industry in New York. And really you're not. You just need to figure out how to train people, how to reframe what you're looking for, and how to actually work with people. Because again, this is human-centered. Until we have artificial intelligence put all this stuff together, we're going to need people. And it's not just going to be the people who are your next door neighbors or your friends. And you're also going to have to pay people properly. I feel like I should have started with that. And so then selfishly, the last thing I'll say is that I get to visit a really wonderful, ethically led, women-centered team. I will get to learn because I need to expand my brain, and I'll also hopefully get to play with really beautiful textiles. So.
Now we'll come to the third, which is the regenerative material, so Burak. And I understand you're working with Dr. Theanne with the lab-grown circulator on the most famous Telfar's shopping bag. And we all know it's more than just a bag, right? I just learned that it's been called Bushwick Birkin. Well, I don't understand why, because I'm not from here, and then I think it looks definitely much better than Birkin. But anyway, I guess it means it's an icon, which mobilizes a group of people around it. So by working with a scientist, how does that mean, are you engage more communities, or how is using a different leathers is a new message you're sending to the people who are following this bag, or like what does this collaboration means to this famous iconic bag?
I mean, hey. I mean, I think that our presence in this, if it's useful at all, will probably be for us to be prickly. Because like our experience in general, I mean, for you who don't know, Telfar is a black-owned line, started in 2004 in New York City by Telfar Clemens. Telfar is with Tina Turner right now. We had a coin toss. But this line, like it's a 100% genderless line, always has been, and that meant that it didn't get any press for the first 10 years that it was around. So like that, for us, like the discourse around sustainability reminds us of the discourse around inclusion, and that's like a place where we also have like the same kind of reticence, because we are around before the discourse existed. And like the word inclusion, I think, is kind of instructive because you have, like if you just take it at face value, it's about being included in someone else's world and in someone else's enterprise and being kind of this relationship between the guest and the host, and and sustainability for me is an interesting word to describe the necessity of transforming the world. And there's like a certain logic to why governments and corporations like this word. Like, is it really that we're sustaining, or is it that we have to transform things? So like, like we were kind of asked to join this thing. We're really interested in doing it. Like, hearing about the technology is really, really interesting to us. Making it real is really interesting to us. And being careful around like the kind of, there's like a strong possibility that sustainability has a certain horizon of privation around it. Because even if you think about like data first, like you were saying, you can forget about the human beings that have to sustain themselves as well economically. So I think that doing this with the Telfar bag has like a special resonance.
Thank you for that, Burak. And it's definitely true that we need to think about transformation before sustaining what we have, because clearly there's a lot of thought needs to go into the future, and takes us to this conversation around regenerative technologies, which is really pushing that transformation. So, Theanne, what are you working on with Telfar, and how does that work?
Well, first, I'm beyond berserker excited to be here and honored, and thank you to Slow Factory and Swarovski and UN Office of Partnerships and everyone who turned out. And so this is super exciting because a lot of the concepts we've been talking today are really kind of embodied in this bit, but I'm kind of always thinking about the atoms and the molecules in the lab, and now we have Telfar who can bring this to life with all their presence and culture. The project for me is really based on this deep belief that I think is really coming to life, that for me, waste is only waste if you call it waste. It's a missed opportunity. In nature, it's a complete recycling of matter and energy. The byproducts of one reaction are the feedstock for the next, symbiosis. And we really need, at the root of any kind of sustainability at scale, is not only symbiosis with our ecosystem, but also inclusion of groups long marginalized by colonial models and oppressed, and turn some of that ancestral trauma into a celebration of cultural heritage. Next to nature's 3.8 billion years of R&D, the best blueprints we have are indigenous knowledge that's been practiced and perfected over millennia. And so this is like, I'm beyond excited to talk a little bit about, so in nature, nature evolves things exactly what it needs. So the beautiful pink and green colors you see in coral, that is a protein that the organism evolved to provide UV protection for the reef, and it's just a DNA sequence that provides it. There's so many examples of nature where you have like this really beautiful, elegant, symbiotic relationship. And one of the biggest sadnesses as we just decimate ecosystems and communities, and we continue to marginalize communities and keep them in economic colonialism by these models, is that it's not just what we know we're losing, it's what we haven't yet discovered, and the world has not yet to know that we're losing, that I find really, really heartbreaking. And I think, the white tiger makes the cover of Nat Geo, then it might go extinct, but there's a lot of, I always look to an organism for a property and say, what can we learn from that? And I think the unsung hero is really bacteria and microbes. They're my favorite. They keep our guts healthy, they keep serotonin in our brain, they keep bad things off our skin, and they do amazing things. I mean, all the food we have is there's a certain class of bacteria that can crack the bond of nitrogen in the air and make fertilizer for us. Thank you. Like, they do one job and they do it really, really well. And there's a class of bacteria that actually spins pure, wait, this, I need to go back one. We missed a slide, or maybe not. Is there a back? Okay, all right, so we don't have the time lapse. But there's a class of bacteria that spins pure cellulose, nanofiber, it's moving on its own. I can't multitask. So there's a class of bacteria that spins pure nanofibers of cellulose, and it's been around for thousands of years. It's in the food industry. It's coco de nata in the Philippines. It's a bacteria that readily finds, do you ever guys leave soup out on a counter on a warm day and you find a thin jelly film? that's bacteria spinning nanofibers of cellulose that we can make textiles out of. And so we were really excited about this. It's like a snake eating its tail, which is as like a Greek, that's like our very like iconic image of life, death, and regeneration. They're abundant, they're low energy consuming, we can feed sugar from waste stocks. And so we were able to do this and turn it, take that and dry it into, it's not leather at all, it's actually cellulose. We'll just hope. I'll just keep clicking and maybe it'll happen. But we're actually, that slide you saw, we're actually able to make a leather-like material. It's actually microbial nanocellulose, but it has a leather-like feel. But as you can imagine, it's not, there's inherent material properties that limit direct translation to a textile fiber. And so we wanted to look at non-toxic solutions to kind of give it waterproof, stretch, flexibility, strength. Maybe you can help me. And so what we tried a number of different things, and as like a scientist that's always got her head on the atoms, can we make nanofab a lotus leaf and put it on the top so it repels water? And we actually wound up looking to indigenous techniques for tanning leather. And we were able to I always study nature, but also indigenous communities, and this was a really exciting opportunity, and it turned out that we were able to adapt indigenous techniques and make this a really strong, flexible material that could have a number of different form factors. You should just click. Yeah, okay. So the natural color is kind of a brown because it has tannins in it, but one really beautiful thing about this material is you can add plant and mineral color directly to the food source, and this is a range of different colors you see here. Second from the bottom right is detail of an indigo bag designed by one of my fabulous former students, Delphina Fares, who made this jacket dyed with coffee waste and waxed with beeswax, so it's a trench that's waterproof. The students are the best. Also, while I'm on that, most of the volunteers are FIT students that are joining the peaceful revolution of professional troublemakers, so big up to the volunteers. And on the bottom right, that is just sort of capturing some of the life, death, and ephemeralness of marigolds on my street that were infused between the layers. And that's cute, but what this really shows is that you can make seamless seams. So this is a material that can be grown to shape of the cultivation container, and it's a living material that can close onto itself and enable, from what my fashion design friends tell me, big breakthroughs in kind of textile innovation. Another thing to mention is, we'll talk about the life cycle later, but by incorporating color directly into the cultivation medium, compared to toxic dyes, it's a factor of 10,000 lower climate and carcinogenic impacts. And we know that dyes, and all sorts of the communities least responsible for climate change are most affected by them, by toxicities, rising sea levels. And the last point I kind of want to make is that this is a really exciting opportunity with Telfar, is that bringing this to life is an opportunity to redirect any of the gains from this to indigenous scholarships. And what's so meaningful to me about that is when we talk about climate positivity at scale, all these cool biomaterials, and I love them, I'm a co-founder of AlgaeNet, we're growing bioleather, that's ranked out of the top 100 solutions to reverse climate change by 2050. It's about 40 something. Educating women and girls, six in terms of reversing climate change. So being able to have indigenous scholarships, so women and Native women are, suffer much more violence. They are, I don't want to start to cry, but we've talked a lot about it today. They are one of the most oppressed groups, and they suffer the most violence and have the biggest limitations, Black, brown, and indigenous women. So being able to create scholarship funds, it's not only a closed loop system, but it's a system for inclusive sustainable development, for climate positivity that really kind of celebrates nature and indigenous knowledge.
Yeah, thank you. So I want to quickly ask, because you briefly mentioned it, you also did the life cycle analysis for traditional leather versus the lab-grown leather. So can you talk about that?
Yeah, but I did it with the help. Grace, Delphina, wave your hands. So Grace and Delphina actually did the leather and the PVC vegan leather, and then I did the bacterial leather. This was a semester of work. They worked super hard. And what you're seeing here on the left is, so one thing that I really love about this is that life cycle assessment forces transparency. Right? I mean, you have to give a full inventory. And so we wanted to do this from the beginning. And what we see here is that on the far left is leather treated with chrome, but also all the tanning agents that are really polluting all the rivers around the world and now moving from China into Africa with companies in the West. The second one is PVC, which is vegan leather, which is essentially plastic. The third one is leather with like lower impact tanning ingredients. And then on the far right is microbial bioleather. And the first one is, this is for 1.5 yards of fabric. And the first one where you see a little blip is if I'm gonna grow 1.5 yards of fabric. If you do that to scale with the same considerations as leather and vegan leather, you've got 1,000-time impact reduction. And the biggest impacts, if you'll notice, for carbon emissions, the microbial bioleather, the middle one, is a little higher than the leather. The total carbon impacts from that come from the growth vessel. So if we can skip to the next one. So this allows us to so when we do this in detail, we can actually look at total impacts, and we can see that the microbial bioleather is a factor of 1,000 improvement. So this is an opportunity for, and we can probably click, we can sit on this for a while, but, and we can also see how the impacts shake down. So what we're looking at is this is not only a climate neutral textile. We feed our bacteria sugar from brewery waste streams. So we go to the brewery, we get their spent malt, we run hot water through it, we calculate the grams of sugar, we feed it to our bacteria. And I think the circularity of this is that we actually could have a carbon negative. So by working with other communities, and I think that's the beauty of this, right? That nobody's solving this on their own, and we need to partner with this. But at the end of the day, this is the ultimate snake eating its tail, and the fact that it can be brought to life in something beautiful that incorporates all the facets of climate positivity at scale that we've discussed today is beyond an honor.
Thank you, Theanne, and it must have been a fascinating meeting when you met with the Telfar team. And exactly, I think it applies to all of our designers. And so I guess we can ask also open to everyone, right? Maybe one more question.
Yeah, I think we have. Well, I think we talk a lot about like the people, the women who make the process, the makers. But I'm also very interested on the end users. So especially for designers, like Phillip or Telfar, like you have such a close relationship with your customers or people who use your stuff. So what do you imagine what go through their mind when they're going to use this innovative leather bag or whatever your secret creations are? Like, what is the end user, your customers, going to feel?
I mean, I think there's there's like the matter of utility, but there's also, like, what we do is so much about kind of creating like we kind of were in this position where we had to decide between changing to fit into the environment, which wasn't really like much of a possibility, and then to go into the project of trying to create an environment and like create a community, because at the end of the day, like the bag is a really good example because there wasn't a product like that and there wasn't a customer like that. Like that wasn't someone who was even walking into a store. So like, that when you're able to kind of to create like, to create and like to visualize a type of person and a type of belonging that isn't there previously and allow people to be that person. I think that that's like, fashion seems like a really shallow thing, but the word itself is not so shallow, Like the way we express ourselves through our manifestation is kind of important.
Yeah. It's kind of, it's related. Empowered. I think empowered, engaged, that there are options or something's visible, that there is hope. You know what I mean? And I think hope is a big word. And, sure, we can dog on fashion all we want, but we're all up here because of fashion. I'm sorry to tell you that, but it's almost like, how do we all collectively join forces, listen to each other, hear each other's stories, and also just have an open mind to move collectively to a better space of fashion. I love fashion. In my office, people are always looking at us, oh, you must be so successful, this and that, blah, blah, blah. But, I just have more problems too. And we speak about, immigrants and women, opportunity for women. If you come to our studio, it's 85% women, immigrant women. Every single one in every single department that's a director is a woman. Every single department. We have one of the rare in-house ateliers where I employ and learn from sifus, or masters of the game, masters of the hand, that still exist. And when we take in interns, we have them back there to learn from each other. So it's quite multi-generational too. So for me I'm up here to think about the future, to think about the present, to take little actions that can help save fashion, basically. That's all I'm representing, just potential hope.
Our particular project is really about building new systems and trying to explore our broken ones and up-leveling as individuals or as individual brands, because without that individual work right now, there's no way that we can sustain a collective uplifting right now, and we need the collective, but it has to be done on a very personal level to begin with, and personal meaning these individual companies. So for us, examining into our systems, I can only hope and believe that it can lead to an example through when we fall and don't get it right, to when we, do get things right. And I think it's like stretching that muscle of communication and honesty, and like letting fear aspects go around this, because there's a lot of fear in all of this work, and I watch myself within it either kind of spiral into places of concern that can almost be paralyzing to move out of not doing something right, or just feeling that one thing is off in this movement. And I look at everything from kind of that awareness perspective and that consciousness place. And once fear or judgment steps in, it goes dark. And the only antidote for that is to open up, and I gotta say it, into this space of love, and through that is through human connection and upliftment and figuring out with a lot of compassion and love our broken parts, and going into them right now and feeling safe enough to do that. So having a collaboration like this, and I'm hoping that it can be something that we can live very honestly and openly about what works and what doesn't work about it, will hopefully be a space of inspiration for others to like get into the shadows and get out into the light, because we got to do this pretty quick.
That's amazing. Maybe for our team here, one final question as well. Your starting point for all three of you as a business hasn't been necessarily to create a collection. You came from a very different perspective, and you connect with the fashion industry. So ideally, through this engagement, what kind of an outcome you would like to see for your own concepts and ideas and businesses?
I would say we've talked today about how there are so many intersecting, cross-cutting challenges in the fashion industry. But I think one thing that's inspiring about looking at this from the perspective of design is that in design, you come to appreciate that everything that has been made can be unmade and remade. And that happens on the level of the molecule, the fiber, the garment, and the systems of power that we have fallen into or have been architected intentionally against the best interest of our collective humanity. So my ideal outcome for this collaboration is to be able to make something that's from that changed future. And it will be a very different future, and we have to choose it and build it and craft it, and it's gonna take all of us. But if we can have that experience of how brilliant and beautiful and desirable and celebratory that better status quo is, I believe that that's an important first step to getting in gear to pursue it. So that's my ideal outcome.
My ideal outcome is really getting at the truth and figuring out, okay, so now that we have it, we got it, we understand what reality is, then to repair it with all of us. And so, short story, one of the women who graduated from our training program in 2019, she told me during her assessment that she was really happy when we got to pattern making because she really didn't like sewing. She wasn't great at it, and she was going to quit. But then she decided, well, if I do that, I'm going to stay home and get fat, and my family's going to talk about me. So then she came to class the next week, and she learned pattern making. It was really transformative with her because she's good at math and she likes math. Fast forward to a few weeks ago, I said, where is this person? We need somebody to make some patterns. And also she knows how to sew leather. And then the answer that I heard from my colleague was, oh, well, her phone is turned off. And then when she called here from somebody else's phone, she didn't have a Metro card to get here, right? So we've got somebody who's got hella skills sitting at home because she doesn't have a Metro card. Right? And so I can't talk to Cuomo to say, well, like, actually, transportation needs to be free for everybody in the city. But I can figure out, right? I can figure out how to get her a weekly Metro card. And so then when I heard last week, when I was away, that she was in the studio, I was like, okay, so we've done our little part, but like, it doesn't have to be this small and silly, right? I don't have to run myself ragged as well as my teammates, right, to do things that we all know that we can do. So I really want to unearth the truth and share it and let us all figure out in each of our ways how to make all of this better.
I mean, I think we know what I hope to get, and we know the system's broken, and in principle, we know the things we need to do to fix it, but we need those things to come together. And I think that this project represents a space where all those different voices and local needs and, sure, how to map all these ideas into an inclusive model that actually takes all these facets of inclusive development into consideration. And I think one part that is, for me personally, is instead of sustainability being limiting and dark and shaming, I think this is an opportunity to bring in a celebration of nature and ancestral knowledge and collaboration and inclusivity so that it becomes a place of joy and discovery. So I'm very interested in putting the discovery aspect into sustainable innovation and sort of celebrating human potential and how we can interact with our ecosystem in a really beautiful way and kind of looking at how much we have to learn from each other, from our plants, from different cultures. And for me, that's just like, that's the joy of discovery that I think is going to help fuel some of the, it's good to be mad, right? It makes you do things, but it's also fueled by joy and love is also, so a little bit of both. So I think this represents the opportunity to channel that despair into a place of discovery-driven inclusivity.
So thank you, Slope Factory and Swarovski, for bringing this team together. It's the end of our panel. Thank you for listening. So we'll have the closing remarks now.